on time. For those of you who are in your seats, thank you for being in your seats. For those of you who are not in your seats, please find a seat. If you don't find a seat, I'll be putting you in a seat momentarily. So, we had a wonderful first part of the morning, and I'm sure our next bit of time together will also be very challenging. Just on a practical detail level, again, as I mentioned this morning, if you're looking at the schedule for the day, what you need to be looking at is not what's in the printed program, but what was on the insert, the erratum. I'm not sure if it was an erratum, but it is what it is. So we will break for lunch at approximately 12:15 and then reconvene at 1:30. So that's a bit of a difference. We have a little bit of a wiggle room for a slam dunk if we need one, but we're very, very fortunate now to keep this very stimulating conversation from this morning moving into the next dimension of the challenge. We've entitled this Two Voices, Technologies for Education, New Tools for New Possibilities. And I'm going to ask Father Michael Smith of Jesuit Refugee Service to start, and then for Ashish Ganesh from BanQ to offer his remarks, and then we'll open it up for questions and discussions. So, Father Michael.
Well, first of all, thank you, especially to Loic, for inviting me, and for you for having that idea, Tony. It was a good idea. Thank you. Technologies for education, new tools for new possibilities. I'm going to speak first, and then I'm going to hand over to Ashish because he's fascinating. So we're saving the best wine till last. So my name is Michael Smith, and I'm the International Education Coordinator for Jesuit Refugee Service. I've been an academic for the last 20 years, and now I'm in the Refugee Service, originally from New Zealand and part of the Australian province of the Society of Jesus. This, as we know, is an iconic photograph. At this time, the North Vietnamese army was entering into Saigon, and people were already trying to escape. In the next 20 years, over 2 million people got onto boats and escaped from Vietnam. Father Pedro Arrupe, who was the Superior General of the Society of Jesus at this time, was appalled by what he saw. He was at a meeting in Bangkok, and he founded the Jesuit Refugee Service. And it was his last act as our Superior General. At Fumicino Airport, he had a stroke. So this was the last thing he did, was to found Jesuit Refugee Service. So, I was sent to the Vietnamese refugee camp in Puerto, Princesa in the Philippines in 1983 when I was a seminarian. And this was, boats were coming across the Indo-Chinese Sea and coming directly to the island of Palawan. So this is where the refugee camp was. And these were some of my friends in the camp. I lived in the camp, and this was me. So two things you note about this. This was when I was 30 years old. One is you lose weight when you live in a refugee camp, but I cannot for the life of me work out why I decided to grow a moustache. Not my best feature. Anyway, this was me in 1984. So I spent I spent 4 months teaching there. I had huge classes, 70, 80 people. I was teaching English. But I remember thinking to myself, young people in this camp, and I had these beautiful, intelligent, young Vietnamese men and women, and I thought, young people in this camp, they need a university. So, but how? So I was going to build this is the way I think. I was going to build the university in the camp. We were going to have a lecture theatre over here and a library over there, and it was completely impractical. But in the year 2000, I went to the My La refugee camp on the border between Myanmar and Thailand, and I thought, how can we offer university education to refugees in a camp? So, 16 years later, this question is still there. But now it's possible. So, I got back to Australia, and I have a friend at Australian Catholic University, was Professor Mari Joyce, and I told her about this dream, and she said, well, let's get a committee together, and some of your best work will be done in committees, believe it or not. And so she said, let's see what we can do. So this is my question. Can we deliver online university education to camp-based refugees? It's too technically difficult to deliver online education in a refugee camp. But we did it. We did it. So, this is a fact. Here's a fact. In 2006, a young refugee woman, a Karen refugee from the Thai-Burma border named Imelda Mu, this is Imelda, graduated with an undergraduate diploma in business administration from Australian Catholic University. Now, the day before the graduation, you see she's got an academic gown and everything. We took up a huge suitcase full of academic gowns, massive suitcase, and Qantas let us take it for nothing because we told them what it was for. So we had a practice. When she was going to receive her, she was going to come out and she bowed and all that sort of stuff and tipped her hat and received her testama. And when at the practice she said, I'm so excited. Then she said, for the first time in my life, I'm excited. And that just killed me. For the first time in her life, she was excited. So this was a refugee in a little town called Maysot, not in Melbourne, Australia. So, in 2003, Australian Catholic University began to offer this Diploma of Business Administration, which, by the way, was designed for the Indigenous people in Australia, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. And we had 16 graduates in 2006. And here's the graduation. And here's all those academic gowns. And here's the award ceremony. Now, these transcripts here are so important. Transcripts and testamas, I love that discussion this morning, it was spot on. These are like gold. These are gold for refugees. It gives them an identity. Anyway, so then the next thing we did was we went to Open Universities Australia. We approached the board and said, could they offer some scholarships? This is a consortium of Australian universities, these different universities. Public universities, not Catholic universities, public universities. And they offered, and they still continue to offer, 11 years later, they offer 35 scholarships a year for refugees from Myanmar, and 3 have completed their master's degrees. Full master's degrees as refugees on the Thai-Burma border. So, ACU's got 70 students enrolled in the Diploma of Liberal Studies, some in Maysot, some in Ranong, and Open Universities Australia have got various sites up and down the border. So the next thing was, my vision was, how do I get Jesuit Refugee Service and Jesuit universities together? So I went to a conference at Regis University in Denver in 2006, and I gave them basically the talk I've just given you now, and put up a proposal that a consortium of Jesuit universities begin to offer courses to refugees in collaboration with Jesuit Refugee Service. So that was the broad idea. Now, afterwards, in the afternoon, we had small groups, and so we were in this little circle, and this one of the women in the small group, she said to me, "Father," this is my Midwest accent. She said, "Father, what you're doing with the refugees is extraordinary." And this Jesuit said, "It's not extraordinary." And everybody went, "Oh, there's going to be a fight between two Jesuits." "It's not extraordinary." He said, "It's ordinary. It's what should happen. Refugees should have access to higher education. It's a matter of social justice." And actually, the work in education for refugees, it's ordinary. It is ordinary. It's in an extraordinary situation, but it's doing ordinary things. Ordinary preschool, ordinary primary school, ordinary secondary school, and so on. Okay, but it's just the situation is extraordinary. So this lady, Mary McFarland, she came up straight after my talk, and she did that actually. She said, "I'd like to help." And so she founded Jesuit Worldwide Learning. And is Peter Belice, has he escaped? Anyway, that's Peter who spoke to us this morning, is over there. She and Peter began the Jesuit Worldwide Learning, or its precursor, working with Jesuit Refugee Service. So these are the various sites that Peter gave us this morning: Kakuma, Zalika, Aleppo in Syria, Amman, Afghanistan, Mahong Song, Taunji, Chad, Sri Lanka, Philippines, and others. We've got 5,567 doing professional courses, community service learning tracks. These are not degrees. 328 enrolled in the Diploma of Liberal Arts, 26 different countries of origin. So this is what it looks like. This is what it looks like in a camp. This is Zalika in Malawi, which I visited earlier in the year. By the way, it's not just online. It's mixed mode. So it's online, but it's supplemented by an on-the-ground tutor. And these students would all be studying the same subject at the same time. So it's like having a class, and you have a tutor, but you can study at your own pace. So it's sort of halfway between face-to-face and online. Okay. And that's yeah. And this is the graduation in Zalika, and that's Mary right in the middle there. And these are some of the graduates. So are there educational advantages in studying online? Yes, I think there are. So if you have a threaded conversation in an online forum, you're typing in your answers, the lecturer puts up a question and you type in your answer, or you get face-to-face interactions in a seminar, which is better? I know that I must admit that sometimes I went to seminars and I hadn't done the reading. And do you remember that? Hands up those who went to seminars and didn't do the reading, please. Thank you. Very honest. And so you come on, Bart. Don't shake your head like that. Come on. So you hide behind the next person and hope the lecturer won't ask you a question. In a threaded conversation, you have time to read, and then everybody gets to answer the question. And this is particularly useful for refugees for whom English is not their first language. They're less inhibited expressing opinions online. And I think there's more depth, quality and thoughtfulness than in a face-to-face seminar. Okay. The other thing is time. You have more time to write thoughtful responses. Because the learning is asynchronous, you can learn at your own pace. And the other thing about time is people can be in refugee camps for 17 years. 17 years. You can waste the whole of your academic life in a camp, whereas, I mean, you're not wasting time, you're actually learning in the camp. And the other thing is, I don't know about you, but I taught for 20 years at university, and I don't think I ever got through a whole lecture and covered all the material, because someone would ask an interesting question, and then you go off on a tangent, and then you don't cover it. Here, all the material is in the learning management system, so that a student can access it. The other thing about studying online is that people from all over the world, including refugees, can learn and grow together in an online course. So you might have a refugee on the Thai-Burma border, and somebody in North Sydney, and somebody in Toronto, and somebody in Denmark, all studying the same subject together. Some refugee students have access to, only some by the way, have access to higher education and feel they're not forgotten. Our parents are grateful that their children have opportunities to study. And what we've noticed is in some of the camps is there's a flow-on effect, that people study in the morning and then they'll go back to their zone in the camp and maybe teach that subject to someone else. This cross-cultural and collaborative learning broadens the horizons of both first world and refugee students. So it's not just a one-way street. It's not just doing something good for refugees, but actually refugees can contribute something to first world students. There's a mutuality there and a growing sense of global citizenship. So, how can we offer university education to refugees in a camp? Well, this is still my question. I've presented one model. Are there others we could explore? 65 million refugees and forcibly displaced people in the world. Much fewer than 1% have access to tertiary education. How could we work together to provide more education opportunities for refugees? And perhaps you have a creative idea. I'm going to hand over to my colleague now, because I'm really interested in this man and what he's going to say.
Hi, I don't have any slides. I don't know how to follow that up, but anyway, I'll make it quick. I just try to keep it personal. So I grew up in a slum in India. I'm not looking for pity. I'm here, so I'm pretty blessed to be here. But growing up in India, if you anybody from that part of the world, we got a ration card. And the ration card was your existence that got you education, free education. You got your rice, you got your wheat, you got your, I mean, if you're from India, you know that. But at the end of the day, that ration card was your dignity and your identity, and you actually didn't have either because you didn't exist. Fast forward, I got very lucky. I got out of India. I moved to the United States, built and sold a couple of startups, sold my last company in 2012, and I retired, and I decided to spend a couple of years in Congo just because my wife said, don't sit at home. So I spent 2 years working as a volunteer CEO for USAID, helping women farmers and in terms of farming and things like that. And at the end of 2014, I got into a fight, which leads me to where I'm today. And I got into a fight because one of the women farmers I was working with, she wanted to open a bank account. And the local bank, if you've been to Congo on the Rwanda border in a place called Bukavu, they refused to let her open a bank account. And I got into a fight because the teller kept saying, I can't bank her, but I'll bank you. That's where the name comes from. And it bothered me. It bothered me so much that I decided to figure out, why did he say I can bank you? And I was, U.S. citizen, not a Congolese. And what I realized that this woman had education. She had enrolled in a couple of similar programs. She was doing some online learning classes. She had Harvest. She had 3 microfinance loans. She was a certified farmer, and she had a folder that had her education certificate in it. She had a folder that said she was a valid farmer. But at the end of the day, she didn't exist because she couldn't prove her credentials. She did not have the economic passport. She didn't exist. And I spent last year and this year a lot of time in the Dadaab refugee camp, outside the Dadaab refugee camp, the Zatri camps. And one interesting thing that jumped out at me in all those situations was, if you're a refugee in the Dadaab refugee camp, you're learning HTML programming. You're taking a reading writing course. If you're in Zatri, you're doing the same thing. But at the end of the day, if you move or you're forced to move, you get reset. And so a lot of the refugees that I've interacted with in the last 5.5 years, unfortunately, they walk with a big reset button on their head that we, trying to be a little provocative here, love to push, right? Because every time you move, you get reset. Because your credentials don't matter. Your credentials don't exist. Because you're a number, and nothing against the NGOs and the UNs. It's just a fact. You're a number in somebody's database. You're a number in a online platform, and technically, if you move, you get reset, right? So if you talk to the refugees who are in the US, I had an Uber driver who was a doctor, and he's like, nobody cares. Because at the end of the day, what we've all discussed this morning is the fact that all the education that's being imparted to the refugees, and somebody said it the best this morning, we're helping them, but we're not empowering them. And so we decided to solve that problem using a technology called blockchain. Now, don't freak out. There's this misnomer on blockchain. Everybody thinks about blockchain as cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, and we don't touch the cryptocurrency side at all. Because the power of blockchain is very basic in the context of the conversation we're having in this conversation, which is what? Which is that blockchain is an enabling technology that is distributed, which means that you are recognized in a distributed network of people and computers in a way that your data won't be stolen, in a way that your data won't be compromised, and in a way that your data will be accessible, that is portable from anywhere in the world. So what does this mean in terms of why blockchain for refugees when it comes to their education or certification? And I always go back to that mother in Congo that I had that fight over, because if at that point her data in terms of her education credentials, her harvest information, was available on the blockchain in a way that she could access from anywhere in the world, even though she had to move potentially from Bukavu to Kigali, if she was a refugee, she would be able to prove that, hey, I exist because my credentials have value and my credentials aren't stolen, right? So what I'm going to propose here today is something that what we're doing in 5 countries with refugees and migrant workers, which is not to rewrite the content, right? I'm not an education, not to rewrite the content, but just propose that technologies like blockchain, if used the right way, can help the Catholic university system, or any university system for that matter, collaborate in a way that it puts the refugee in the center instead of in the silos of the university's databases, right? Which is a big problem today, because in the world we live in, the data, whoever owns your data monetizes it, right? Which means the refugee is always at the mercy of whoever's imparting that knowledge. And if you look at the true word that we're all here for, is that knowledge should be shared and equally owned. And yet, if you see what's happening in refugee camps, in or outside, in host communities, refugees are walking around with file folders, right? I love the European passport idea, but in just an open dialogue, I would say there's a flaw in the model there, because if I lose that piece of paper, I'm back to zero. And a technology like blockchain, which is a distributed ledger, it creates an immutable or indestructible record that everybody now can securely access, because refugee data security is one of the most important things that we are empowered to protect and guard, right? So if one of these databases gets hacked, you're compromising their security. So blockchain solves that. It's not going to solve all the problems, but it solves something fundamentally that we as technologists, and I'm a geek, in the last 30 years of my career that I have not been able to solve. And I'll use a very simple example, right? So if I sold a cup of coffee, okay, if I sold a cup of coffee to Tony today, right? Just take a very simple example to define blockchain in the context of this conference. If I sold Tony a cup of coffee right now, and I am a coffee company, I have his data, right? He cannot prove that that transaction happened because his data sits in my database, correct? And if he went from here to London, he cannot prove that that cup of coffee was bought. Or if I gave him an education, if I certified him as a HTML programmer today, and I gave him a piece of paper, there's no way he can prove if he's moved forcibly, especially if his house was burned down, like what's happening with the Rohingya, right, in Myanmar. He cannot prove that he exists because of that transaction. Whereas if we use blockchain, which is nothing but a way of saying Tony has equal rights in this transaction, he will have a copy, digital copy, that he can access from anywhere in the world that nobody can steal or compromise. Look at the power of that example. If I just connected Tony onto the blockchain and his education now would be valid for the rest of his life, and all Catholic universities or non-Catholic universities could accept that record because it was certified between two parties, right? So that is the real value of blockchain. It's not about the technology. It's really the democratization of information on behalf of the refugee. Because somebody said this morning, right? If we can empower them with their data, if the refugees that was just spoken about, Father Michael talked about, is if that Vietnamese student moved to the US and if she didn't have her scroll with her, she would probably be working as a checkout person at Walmart, right? Yet if her record was proven on blockchain, she's in a trusted network on blockchain, she's much more employable, right? So the power really is less about technology. The power is about restoring dignity to those people whose dignity has been stolen in a way that their education is valid. And I'll stop at that. He's going to beat me in the back. No.
The floor is open.
Hi. So my name is Shai Reshef. I'm the president of University of the People. University of the People is the first non-profit, tuition-free, accredited, online American university. And I think that both of your ideas are fascinating and true. I believe that online learning is the solution for refugees. It's not necessarily, and we should mention it, the perfect solution for everyone. Some try, can't make it. It's too hard. It's much harder than attending traditional school, traditional universities. However, the opportunity is there to give the chance or the opportunity to every single refugee in the world. We look at universities now and they take 5, 10, 20 refugees, which is great. It's amazing for the refugees. It's very nice of the universities to do that. But talking about the Syrian refugees, there are 200,000 Syrians who are left of the universities. What do we do with them? No one can take them. The only way to enroll all of them is through online, and we should endorse it. And for those who are critical about, well, online is not necessarily the best solution for everyone, I agree. But it's better than nothing. Give them the opportunity. If they can make it, it would be amazing for them. If they cannot make it, that's still they had the chance. I want to say one more thing about. I think that the blockchain is an amazing idea. I hope it will flourish and everyone will adopt it because it's a major issue. What we do, which is not against what you do, but because people come to us and We at the University of the People took over 1,000 refugees, over 500 Syrian refugees studying with us online from wherever they are. And again, you're right, they come without their documents. So what we do, we develop 2 courses that they have to take and pass them to demonstrate to us that they meet our standards. If they do that, they don't need to show us their documents, and we went through our accreditation agency. But you know, this is a unique situation where we can solve it. But even then, when they get our degree and they move forward, what would they do? So I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Three questions, all in that area, so great.
Okay. Thank you to the last speaker. And I really do love the idea of blockchain. And I would like to add that the qualification passport will be digitized. We are looking into it. So it will be stored in a secure manner so that the refugee can release the information to third parties at their own discretion. So we are working on it.
Bonjour, je suis Marie Stanous du Liban, de l'Université Saint-Joseph. L'idée est très intéressante, l'accès à l'éducation. Ok, je vais répéter. L'idée de l'accès à l'éducation supérieure par des enseignements en ligne est très intéressante. Cependant, il y a aussi beaucoup de barrières. Je viens du Liban et je connais beaucoup les barrières. La première, c'est une barrière de langue. Par exemple, si on parle de réfugiés syriens, il y a des barrières de langue très importantes. La deuxième barrière est celle de la réglementation dans les pays. Par exemple, chez nous, on ne reconnaît pas les enseignements faits en ligne. Ils ne sont pas validés. On ne peut pas donner des crédits. Donc, j'ai entendu aussi dans la conférence avant, on a soulevé ces problèmes de réglementation dans les pays. Alors, voilà, il faut aussi se rendre compte de ces obstacles. Merci. Déjà, au niveau de l'éducation de base, il y a eu des obstacles de ce type-là. Alors, voyons comment on peut penser à les éliminer.
So just to quick to respond to the regulation piece, right? So one of the things that we're finding, so we do work with a lot in the Jordan-Syrian border, and I think from a regulation standpoint, one of the things that we're starting to do is pushing the idea of a baseline collaboration between universities and employers, right? So where if you're looking at creating a digital certificate of baseline on blockchain that people are consuming that certificate, it's less of a battle with the regulation, but showing that there's collaboration where people can then start accepting that format. So you're not saying that we're going anti-regulation. So that's just a way to go about it.
Okay, thank you for your great presentations. And I have a comment on Father Smith and questions too. Just knowing that less than 1% of the refugees have access to higher education in the world, I would imagine there might be some very important factors that prevent them from their own experience to get involved in opportunities for higher educations, as well as for institutions. So do you have any experience involving former students who graduated from the programs to become sort of mentors or engaging in training new generation of refugees? I would imagine that could be a very powerful tool to attract new refugees and trust in the system to overcome this very kind of psychological resistance to believe and trust on higher education programs.
I don't think the main reason that people don't access higher education is psychological or some resistance. Oh no, it's just that it's not available to them. The opportunities aren't there. Certainly on the Thai-Burma border, we've had many students who have graduated and gone on and have come back and have helped other students and have become tutors themselves. So no, it's not a psychological or a barrier. The pass rate of our students is almost 100%. Why? Because we're very selective, but also you're getting the best and the brightest amongst the refugees. So there's not a lot of resistance to higher education. It's just that there are obstacles in being in a camp, not having access, and so on.
Je vais poser la question ou parler en français, s'il vous plaît. J'ai été frappé par ce qui a été dit sur la culture des déchets. La culture du déchet, ce n'est pas seulement viser les personnes qui sont mises sur le côté, parmi lesquelles on peut trouver les personnes âgées, on peut trouver les réfugiés, si on veut les considérer comme cela. Mais je pense aussi que nous avons à réfléchir sur la culture du déchet dans nos universités. Si nous avons, dans les 60 universités italiennes, comme cela nous a été dit, l'équivalent du budget de 2 universités américaines, nous avons à nous intéresser à la manière dont nous dédions nos ressources, à la fois dans les universités italiennes et probablement dans toutes les autres. Notre rythme de l'année académique fait que nous fermons pratiquement 3 mois par an. Pendant 3 mois, les locaux sont vides. Pendant 3 mois, il y a des gens qui travaillent. Donc nous avons là des ressources que nous pouvons utiliser. Dans la petite université d'où je viens en Belgique, nous avons commencé par un cours de français pour langue étrangère. Nous avons commencé parce que nous cherchions un cours de français pour 2 personnes âgées de 73 ans et 75 ans. Et on nous disait en ville qu'il était impossible d'apprendre le français à cet âge-là et que c'était absolument inutile d'essayer de leur apprendre le français et que par ailleurs, c'était des étudiants qui ne seraient pas subsidiés. Qu'est-ce que nous avons fait? Nous avons ouvert un cours de français. Et en ouvrant le cours de français, on s'est rendu compte qu'il ne fallait pas interrompre l'apprentissage. Et donc nous avons obtenu gratuitement, et ça c'est la subsidiarité, utiliser les ressources où elles sont, nous avons obtenu les licences online Erasmus qui sont destinées aux étudiants qui apprennent le français et nous les avons demandées pour ouvrir les pools informatiques pendant les vacances, pendant plusieurs mois, et nous avons fait une espèce d'accompagnement. Mais voilà, la culture du déchet, nous devons aussi nous poser la question dans nos propres universités. Comment utilisons-nous les ressources que nous avons pleinement avant d'imaginer un programme particulier? Comment utilisons-nous les programmes que nous avons déjà? Comment cherchons-nous à les adapter? Je pense que ça doit faire partie de notre réflexion et que du coup, on va arriver vers ce que l'on fait en matière de cours online, toujours avec cette idée, et si nous sommes, je pense, dans toutes les universités, on a à cœur la cura personalis. Mais la cura personalis, c'est un peu la marque de fabrique des universités jésuites, on en parle beaucoup, mais ça veut dire qu'on met les personnes en relation. Il n'y a rien de tel que d'accompagner quelqu'un, un demandeur d'asile ou un réfugié, au service des inscriptions, pour qu'il aille lui-même s'inscrire. C'est un acte majeur. Et donc, voilà ce qu'est la cura personalis. Le online, oui, mais accompagné par du présentiel et des choses qui sollicitent, des actes, des comportements qui sollicitent tous les services dans nos universités. Parce que si on ne fait pas cela, on crée une espèce de programme qui devient un peu confidentiel dans nos universités. Et je pense que ce n'est pas une manière de mettre en relation les personnes avec le milieu universitaire.
I just want to comment on the waste piece, right? I completely agree. One of the interesting things that we're finding that the whole transcript business that universities have, right, is a big area of opportunity that technologies like blockchain can disrupt. Because right now, the amount of waste that goes into universities in managing the transcript and the certification or credentialing, technologies blockchain can eliminate that paperwork, which means more resources can go towards refugees.
Okay, just want to share an experience with you. This spring, I was in Uganda for 6 weeks. This was the JRS, which is 2 blocks away from the American Embassy. I was teaching English there. Obviously, one of the experiences I had, I went there with all of my ideas about online education and everything, and I'm very technological here, but I was surprised by how expensive internet is. The EC cable arrived in East Africa 10 years ago, and still, because of some of the money dynamics, internet is extremely expensive. And you know, an institution like JRS in the center of Kampala has to manage its internet, and you know, most of that internet goes to compiling reports for international organizations, which gives a little bit of money from time to time, and the education department gets almost nothing of that internet. So it was impossible to do a video presentation. It was even hard to have enough bandwidth to download exercise sheets for English. So okay, you know, how can we move forward? Obviously, there are big debates on this, even in UNHCR, on providing high, you know, broadband internet into the refugee camps. There are guys like Facebook and Google who are who are promoting their projects for connecting Africa and other places, but. What perspective can you bring on this? You know, within 10 years, 20 years, will there be high, you know, broadband internet within refugee camps, or at least within the big cities where these people would like to study?
Thank you for that question. It's one we have addressed in Australia. It is possible to put an online course on a flash drive in terms of all the courseware, the lecturer's notes, the PowerPoints, the learning objectives, even sometimes little videos on a flash drive that someone can just put into a computer. So you actually don't need connectivity. You do need to find some connectivity at some stage when you upload your assessment tasks, because your assessment tasks, well, in our case, were being marked in Sydney, but actually, in terms of the delivery of the course, you don't actually need the internet.
Just to give a little more geeky answer to that is one of the things that we're doing is we are using SMS to provide certifications once a course like that is done. So if you're a refugee, you don't need internet bandwidth. You can recover your digital signature of your education just through SMS.
Father, we'll make your question the last one, because I've learned that one never delays lunch.
Okay, thank you. Mine is actually a comment and a contribution to Father Michael Smith. Thank you very much for the breadth of your possibility, really. I come from Australia too. I'm the director of the Catholic Bishops' Conference for Migrants and Refugees. My name is Maurizio. I'm Scalabrinian. I just have I'm totally sold actually to your idea. A couple of years ago, in the height of the Syrian crisis, together with the ACU Melbourne campus, as well as the Minister for Foreign Affairs, we had devised a number of visa students to become available to young women and men from Syria. Now, interestingly so, those who were, and rightfully so to some extent, quite opposed to this whole idea. We're talking about probably 100 visas were the patriarchs from Syria. Particularly, I remember having this conversation, quite emotional conversation with the then Catholic Melkite Patriarch, Gregorius III. And his point was that we need to go there, otherwise young people would leave Syria and basically the church would not exist. That was his point. So the program existing through ACU at the border of Myanmar, Burma, became a possibility of example for young people in Syria as well. On top of that, the whole questions of brain damage and so on and so forth could be tackled by way of expanding an education which becomes responsible in place. So, notwithstanding, and of course with some difficulties that need to be studied upon, but I think there is much more than simply providing something to an emergency. I think there is being proactive towards creating something in place. On top of that, I also say that more and more it becomes visible that foreign students going overseas, at a certain point, for situations in their own governments and countries, the scholarship supporting them basically is not available anymore. You might be available with the refugee camps in Villawood, which is just in the outskirts of Sydney, where I do go and celebrate Mass twice a week with the refugees there, together with JRS. Of course, when Father Moe was the director of JRS. Now, I was surprised receiving the statistics just before leaving that 70% of the people in Villawood refugee places are not asylum seekers who came by boat, but are students who overstay their visa student because of lack of funds. So thank you very much for opening this breath. Thank you very much.
To Michael and Ashish, thank you very much. It was a stimulating session. Lunch is in the same room that we had the coffee break. I'll ask you please to enjoy lunch. I'll also make a suggestion that perhaps if there's the opportunity, introduce yourself and chat with someone who you haven't chatted with since the conference started. One of our objectives is to build ongoing relationships among and between us, so take advantage of that opportunity. And then my third request, please, is be back here at 1:30. We have a very full afternoon. Thank you very much.